It started like any ordinary weekend afternoon. The house smelled faintly of vanilla candles and fresh laundry, comforting, familiar, and a little too quiet for my own good. I've been over 100 times before, helping my best friend with homework, staying over for games, but that day he wasn't home yet. His mom had answered the door instead, dressed casually in a fitted cream sweater and jeans, her long black hair tied back loosely, soft strands escaping to frame her face. "Come in. He's running late," she said, her voice warm but tired. I could tell she'd been cleaning or maybe working around the house. The sunlight poured through the curtains, catching the light tan of her skin, the faint laugh lines that hinted at years of warmth and wisdom. She wasn't trying to look perfect, she just was. Effortlessly. I sat at the counter while she moved around the kitchen, pouring coffee, humming softly under her breath. I wasn't sure what it was about that day, but I saw her differently. Noticed how graceful she was, the way she pushed her hair behind her ear, the small smile when she caught me glancing. "You want something to drink?" she asked, raising a brow when I didn't answer right away. Yeah, sure. Thanks." My voice cracked slightly, betraying my nerves. When she set the cup in front of me, her hand brushed mine. It wasn't deliberate, just one of those small, harmless moments, but it lingered in my chest longer than it should have. There was a stillness after that, a silence filled with the sound of a ticking clock and unspoken thoughts. Her eyes met mine, curious, searching. Then, as if realizing the pause had stretched too long, she chuckled and said, "You really shouldn't look at people like that." I swallowed, unsure whether to look away or hold her gaze. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to read their mind," she replied, turning away, though her tone had softened. But I was trying to read her mind. I wanted to understand what flickered behind that calm expression, whether she felt the same faint current I did. That was the first time I noticed her hesitate, when her son's name came up in conversation and her voice faltered, like she was reminding herself of boundaries that shouldn't blur. When he finally showed up, everything returned to normal. She smiled the same way she always did, poured him coffee too, and teased us both about making a mess in the living room. But the air had changed. The tension between us wasn't loud. It was quiet, careful, threaded with curiosity neither of us could ignore anymore. That night, as I left, she walked me to the door. The hallway light fell across her face, and her eyes met mine again. Just for a second. "Good night," she said softly. And for the first time, good night didn't feel simple. It felt like the start of something we both didn't plan, but both had already stepped into. "Would you like me to make the next keynote?" The moment she realized, carry a slightly more emotional tone or a more romantic tension tone. The next few days felt different. Every text, every small memory of her voice replayed in my mind longer than I'd like to admit. I tried to brush it off. She was my best friend's mom. That alone should have been enough to bury the thought. But something about that day kept echoing, like a song I couldn't turn off. When I stopped by again, it wasn't planned. My friend had forgotten his notes at home, and I offered to grab them before class. The house was quiet when I walked in, the kind of quiet that hums softly, filled with afternoon light and the distant ticking of clock. Then I heard her voice. "In here," she called, her tone light, unbothered. She was standing by the dining table, sorting through papers. This time, her hair was loose, falling past her shoulders in soft waves. The sunlight caught the shine in her dark hair, the warmth of her tan skin, and the delicate outline of her collarbone beneath a loose gray blouse. She looked relaxed, content, until she noticed my eyes lingered too long. A small, knowing smile curved her lips. "You came for the notes, right? Not to stare at me again." I froze. "I wasn't." "You were." She said it softly, without malice, but with something deeper, something that made my pulse pick up. Her tone carried amusement, but her eyes held a question she didn't want answered. I stepped closer to hand her the notebook I had brought back. My fingers brushed hers, and this time, neither of us pulled away quickly. Just a moment of contact, small, ordinary, but charged. "You shouldn't look at people that way," she murmured again, almost like she was reminding herself. "Then stop standing where I can't help it," I said before I could stop myself. Her breath caught, barely audible, but I heard it. She turned away, shaking her head with a faint laugh, trying to disguise how much that moment affected her. "You're too young to talk like that." "Maybe," I said quietly, "but you didn't tell me to stop." Her hand stilled. She didn't turn around right away. The pause stretched, not heavy, but fragile, like the space before confession neither of us should make. Finally, she sighed. "You don't understand what you're playing with." "I'm not playing," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. For the first time, she looked unsure, a rare expression for her. She'd always been confident, graceful, in control of every situation. But in that moment, she wasn't my friend's mom. She wasn't someone older, wiser, or untouchable. She was just a woman who suddenly saw something in me she wasn't supposed to. When I left that day, she didn't say goodbye. She just watched me walk away, her lips pressed together, her eyes shadowed with a feeling that looked a lot like temptation. And that was the moment I knew she felt it too. After that day, everything changed, not outwardly, but in the quiet ways that matter most. Every glance carried weight now. Every silence seemed charged with something unspoken. I told myself I'd stop visiting when my friend wasn't home. That would have been the smart thing to do. But the heart rarely listens to reason. One late afternoon, my friend had to run an errand, leaving me at the house while his mom prepared dinner. I offered to help, mostly as an excuse to be near her. She hesitated, but didn't say no. The kitchen smelled of garlic and rosemary. Warm light poured through the window, wrapping everything in a golden calm. She moved with easy grace, sleeves rolled up, her wrists dusted with flour. "You really don't have to help," she said, glancing up with a small smile. "I don't mind," I replied, handing her the cutting board. "Besides, I cook better when someone's watching." That earned a soft laugh, the kind that feels like sunlight when it reaches you. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. "Why not?" "Because they sound like something else." She didn't clarify what something else meant, but she didn't need to. Her tone said everything her words wouldn't. At one point, I reached past her to grab a glass from the cabinet. My hand brushed against her shoulder, a fleeting touch, but she froze. The world seemed to hold its breath. Her hair brushed against my arm, carrying the scent of her shampoo. Faintly floral, familiar. I stepped back immediately, heart racing, pretending to focus on anything else. "You need to be careful," she said softly, not turning around. "I am," I replied. "Maybe you should be too." That made her turn. Slowly, her gaze met mine, calm but searching, as if she was looking for the line between right and wrong and realizing it was fading fast. "You really don't understand what this looks like," she whispered. "I don't care what it looks like," I said. "I just know how it feels." For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The kitchen clock ticked, the oven hummed, but all I could hear was the rhythm of her breathing. When she finally looked away, it wasn't because she didn't want to, it was because she had to. She handed me a plate to set on the table, her fingers brushing mine again, deliberately this time, or maybe not. But her eyes said enough. Asterisk, this can't happen. Yet I don't want it to stop. Asterisk, by the time my friend came back, dinner was ready, and everything looked perfectly normal. But it wasn't. Beneath the laughter, beneath the easy conversation, something fragile was growing. Something we were both too afraid and too drawn to touch. That evening, when she caught my glance from across the table, she didn't look away immediately. Instead, she smiled, faintly, knowingly, before returning to her meal. That was the moment I realized we weren't just flirting anymore. We were already crossing the line, one glance at a time. It started as a simple evening, rain tapping lightly against the windows, the kind of weather that makes everything feel softer, slower. My friend had gone out for the night, leaving the house unusually quiet. I was supposed to drop off a book I'd borrowed, nothing more. But when she opened the door, barefoot and wearing a soft gray sweater that hung loosely off one shoulder, I forgot every excuse I'd rehearsed. "You could have just texted," she said, half smiling, her voice low and tired in that intimate way people sound when they've had a long day. "I was in the area," I lied. She looked at me for a moment, not buying it but not pushing either. "Comin. It's cold out." The living room glowed with a warm amber light from a single lamp. A half-finished glass of red wine sat on the table beside a book with a folded page corner. I could hear the faint sound of jazz playing from another room, something smooth and old. She curled one leg under her as she sat down, gesturing toward the couch across from her. "So," she began, "you're not supposed to be here when he's not home." "I know." And yet, she tilted her head, eyes soft but sharp. "You came anyway. Maybe I wanted to see you." The silence that followed was dangerous, the kind that invites truth when lies would be safer. She leaned back slightly, studying me with that look she often wore when torn between what she wanted and what she should do. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured, echoing the same warning she'd given me before. "But you like when I do." That made her exhale slowly, almost like a sigh. She didn't deny it. She just took a slow sip of wine, the rim of the glass touching her lips with quiet grace. When she set it down, her fingers lingered on the stem, nervous, hesitant. The room felt smaller by the second. I could smell her perfume, faint vanilla and something floral, and the soft hum of the rain outside felt like background music for something neither of us had planned. When she stood to get another glass, I instinctively rose too, reaching out without thinking. My hand brushed hers, light, unsure, but she didn't move away. "You need to stop," she whispered, though her voice trembled, betraying her restraint. "I can't," I said quietly. For a moment, we just stood there, close enough to feel the warmth of each other's breath. Her eyes flickered from my lips to my eyes, and the air between us grew impossibly still. Then, almost reluctantly, she stepped back. "This isn't fair," she said softly. "To you, or to me. I don't care about fair," I whispered. "I care about real." That was when she looked away, running a hand through her hair like she was trying to shake off the tension, but her flushed cheeks said otherwise. She handed me the book I came to return, her fingers brushing mine once more, a spark hidden behind restraint. "Go home," she said, voice barely steady. "Before I forget to tell you to." I left that night, drenched in rain, and in everything we hadn't said. The next few days felt like walking through static. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt right. Her words echoed in my head every night. Asterisk, "Go home, before I forget to tell you to." Asterisk, I try to distract myself. Classes, friends, late-night walks, but my mind kept circling back to her. The way she looked away when our eyes met. The tremor in her voice. The way her fingers brushed mine like she wasn't sure whether to pull back or hold on. By Friday, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I told myself I'd stop by to clear the air, to make things less complicated. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I wasn't going there to forget her. I was going there to see her again. When she opened the door, her surprise was quiet but real. "You again?" "Yeah," I said softly. "Me again." This time, she didn't invite me in right away. Her eyes searched mine, as if trying to measure whether I was a mistake she could still undo. Then, after a long pause, she stepped aside. The house smelled like coffee and cinnamon, warm, domestic, safe. She wore a loose white shirt tucked into faded jeans, her hair still damp from a shower. A few strands clung to her cheek, catching the afternoon light. She looked both older and younger than ever, tired but real, beautiful without trying. "I thought we agreed," she said, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "I didn't agree," I replied. "You told me to leave. I just didn't want to." That made her laugh, a small, nervous laugh that made her eyes soften. She shook her head, staring into her cup. "You really don't make this easy. Maybe it's not supposed to be." The tension in the air felt different this time, quieter, but more dangerous. There was no rain, no music, just the sound of two people trying not to say too much. Finally, she sat down at the kitchen table and gestured for me to sit across from her. "Then say it," she said. "Whatever it is you came here to say." I hesitated, my fingers tracing the edge of the wooden table. "I don't know how to say it without making things worse." "Try." So I did. "I think about you," I admitted. "All the time. I know I shouldn't. I know it's complicated. But when I'm around you, it's like everything slows down. Like nothing else makes sense except being near you." Her expression didn't change right away, but her eyes, they told a different story. They softened, dimmed, filled with something unspoken. "That's not fair," she whispered. "I'm not trying to be fair," I said quietly. "I'm trying to be honest." The silence that followed was heavier than words. She set down her coffee, her fingers trembling slightly. Then she looked at me, really looked, and for the first time didn't look away. "You think this is easy for me," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You think I don't?" She stopped herself mid-sentence, pressing her lips together, shaking her head like she'd just betrayed something she wasn't supposed to feel. That's when I realized she felt it too. She stood abruptly, turning her back to me, her voice low and unsteady. "You should go," she said again. But this time, it didn't sound like an order. It sounded like a plea. And as I walked out, the last thing I saw was her reflection in the window. Eyes closed, hand pressed to her heart, like she was trying to quiet something she could no longer ignore. The air between us had changed. Even when we weren't in the same room, it felt like her presence clung to everything. The air, the light, even the quiet. I tried pretending that nothing had happened, that our confession was something small, something forgettable. But the truth was, it had rewritten everything. Days passed before I saw her again. I caught glimpses through the front window or from across the driveway when she'd step outside to water her plants. Each time, she avoided looking my way, though her movements betrayed her. A slight pause, a breath too long, a hand that lingered midair before retreating. That afternoon, I found myself walking toward her house again. I didn't plan it. My body just moved. The sun was setting, casting soft amber light over everything. And as I reached her door, I could hear faint music playing inside, slow, instrumental, almost nostalgic. I knocked, once, then again. When she opened the door, her expression shifted from surprise to resignation. "You really don't know when to stop, do you? Not when it feels right," I said quietly. She sighed, stepping aside. "You shouldn't be here. Then tell me to leave like you mean it." For a moment, she said nothing. Then, finally, "I can't." That word hung between us like electricity. The room was dimly lit by the sunset filtering through the curtains. She walked to the counter, trying to keep her distance, but her movements were restless, her hands fidgeting with the edge of a towel, her breathing shallow. "Do you have any idea what people would say?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "You're young, and I'm beautiful," I interrupted. "You're beautiful. And you know it's not just that. You make me feel something I can't even explain." She turned sharply toward me, eyes flashing with a mix of anger and longing. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Say things that make me forget why this is wrong." I took a slow step closer. She didn't back away. Her breath hitched, and for the first time, I noticed her hand trembling. "I'm not here to make you forget," I said softly. "I'm here because I can't forget you." Something broke in her then, not loudly, but quietly, in the way her shoulders lowered, the way her lips parted just slightly, as if she'd been holding her breath for days. "You're impossible," she whispered. "Maybe," I said, "but so are you." Her laugh was shaky, half a sob. Then she looked up, her eyes glimmering in the golden light. "If I let this happen, if I let us happen, everything changes. Then let it." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. I didn't mean to sound certain, but I was. Every moment without her had felt half alive. Every moment near her, too real to deny. She took one step closer. The distance between us vanished. Her hand lifted halfway, hesitated in the air, then finally, softly, rested against my cheek. Her touch was warm, trembling. Her thumb brushed my jaw, tracing uncertainty and desire all at once. "I can't do this," she whispered again. "Then why are you still here?" Her eyes closed, her breath caught. And for the first time, she didn't answer. She didn't have to, because we both knew the truth. Sometimes, wanting someone isn't a choice. It's gravity. And neither of us was ready to fall, but neither of us could stop anymore, either. The next morning, the world looked different. Not because it had changed, but because we had. The line we'd danced around for weeks had vanished, and in its place stood a truth too heavy to ignore. The air still carried traces of her, the faint scent of her perfume, the warmth that lingered in my chest like sunlight refusing to fade. But with that warmth came something colder: guilt, fear, uncertainty. When I saw her again later that day, she looked tired. Not physically. She was as effortlessly composed as always, but her eyes told a different story. They looked like they hadn't rested, like her mind had been at war with her heart all night. She sat on the porch, a mug of coffee between her hands, staring at the quiet street. I walked up, and she didn't turn, but she didn't ask me to leave either. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said softly. "I wasn't sure I could stay away," I replied. A small smile tugged at her lips, the kind that tried to hide pain. "You make everything sound so easy." "It's not easy," I said. "It's just real." She turned toward me then, eyes glimmering in the late morning light. "You don't understand. You'll wake up one day and regret this. Maybe not tomorrow, but someday." I shook my head. "And you'll wake up one day and wonder if you pushed away something that could have made you happy." Her breath caught. The silence between us stretched thin. "You don't know what it's like," she said finally, her voice low, "to be seen as the one who should know better. To feel like every glance, every touch, is a risk that costs you your peace." "I do know," I said quietly, "because I feel the same way. Every time I look at you, I'm torn between wanting to protect you and wanting to hold you." Her hand tightened around the mug. Then, slowly, she set it down. "You make it sound so simple," she whispered. "But what happens when this ends? When the world finds out?" I took a step closer, my voice barely above a whisper. "Then let it. Because right now, all I see is you. Not the rules, not the world, just you." Her lips parted, her breath trembling. For a moment, everything around us disappeared. The wind, the street, even time itself. She reached up and touched my face gently, her thumb tracing the edge of my jaw. Her voice cracked when she spoke next. "You don't know how hard this is for me. Then don't do it alone." The words hung in the air, heavy and certain. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw the truth. Not the strong, composed woman everyone else saw, but someone scared of her own heart. She leaned in, pressing her forehead against mine, her breath warm, uneven. "If I let you stay," she whispered, "I'll never be able to let you go." "Then don't." Her eyes fluttered shut, and for a long, fragile moment, we simply stayed there, suspended between what we wanted and what we feared. When she finally pulled away, her voice was barely a whisper. "Promise me something. If this ends, don't let it break you." "I won't," I said, "because even if it ends, it still mattered." She smiled faintly, her thumb brushing once more against my skin before she stepped back. "Then maybe that's enough." As I turned to leave, I could still feel her gaze following me, not with regret, but with the quiet ache of someone who had loved deeply and chosen carefully. Sometimes, love doesn't end with a kiss. Sometimes, it ends with understanding and the memory of a heartbeat that still echoes long after the goodbye.